Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined by Acsom Rabani, where we have plenty to discuss. What a week ahead, Acsom. We've got probably a few transfers coming in the door, a few going out. Thursday, Champions League draw. Tuesday, Oasis reforming, and then Sunday we're going to have the big one, Rangers in the Glasgow Derby. What a week we have in store.
Oh, it's exciting, isn't it? I said it yesterday. We're in for one hell of a week. It's non-stop. It's going to be a busy one on the bulletins daily. A lot to chat about. Even this episode's going to fly in. I think we've got so many different talking points.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And I'll tell you something, Asim, we could talk about the weekend's performance before we get into the 4 or 5 names that are being linked with the club. But by the way, this is interchange. It's constantly changing, and I've got the news source all lined up just in case there's breaking news. No doubt we will hear on the comment section anything that's happening whilst we're live. Let's talk about the performance then at the weekend. Life without Matt O'Reilly, and confirmed not by the club, but certainly by Brendan Rodgers after the game that Matt's in Brighton and that's where he's going to be. He talked him up. He spoke highly of him, as we do on this show. Asim, how did you think we fared without a player who's been a massive contributor over the last few seasons? You might have
Okay.
frozen. You might have frozen a wee bit there, Asim, but you're
Apologies,
back.
I'll
You're
come back
back.
and jump back in.
No problem at all. Whilst you do that, I'll be chatting to the comments. Let's have a wee look at the contribution of his replacement, Paulo Bernardo. I was talking last week about the fact that, yeah, he doesn't look like a like-for-like replacement, but he's certainly going to take his jersey in the starting 11 as Paulo Bernardo. Callum McGregor opened the scoring in front of the international manager, Stevie Clarke. He was laid on by James A. Forrest as well, and James Forrest is about to make his 500th appearance against Rangers at the weekend. Will the Tifo be a tribute to Jamesy Forrest? He is entering the 500 club. Only 12 players have played 500 or more competitive games of football for Celtic. Jamesy Forrest is going to join them at the weekend. What a contribution he has made. Rio Hatate, if we're talking about players who need to step up in the absence of someone like Matt O'Reilly, well, one of those guys has to be Rio Hatate. What did you make of his man of the match performance at the weekend? Does he have it in him to have a Matt O'Reilly style breakthrough season this time round, this campaign? It didn't really go his way last year. It could be his opportunity to step into the berth that Matt O'Reilly has left. And Asim, the show simply is not the same without Asim. So you're back in. Let's start off then. How did we do without Matt?
Can you hear me okay now? All good?
Absolutely perfect, mate.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, St Mirren away was a fixture I was worried about, especially without Matt. We all know how influential he's been at the start of the season. So you're wondering how Bernardo will come in and fit in straight away. But I think it's a testament to how well we're playing as a team. And Bernardo, I thought he slotted in brilliantly. Had a really kind of positive game without being outstanding, but I thought just seemed like he hadn't been away. And the performance right from the off, it's similar to how we've been all season so far, really killing teams off in the first half with such a high intensity and tempo. So really, really pleasing to see that. Obviously, Matt O'Reilly's going to be a massive loss. We're on, there's no doubt about that. But it was just good to see Bernardo kind of slot in and look like he's not been away. And I thought Rio Tati really stood up. People have been speaking about him this season, saying we've not really had that standout performance yet from him. But it looked like he was happier as well yesterday. I've not seen him smiling as much as that, in recent times, and it was good to see. But I thought it was a real standout man of the match for me from Hatate. But all in all, just very encouraging to see that. Yes, Matt O'Reilly's gone, and we're going to miss him. But it seems like as a team right now, we're functioning that well that other players can slot in, and it's not affecting our performance.
No, this is a big thing. We are going to be talking about, that impact that any kind of group of people, Asim, is going to feel if one very important cog in that machine is removed. And you think to yourself, who do you look to? I was talking about this yesterday with Sean. Who do you look to to really just be the constant within the operation. And it is the likes of James Forrest, it is Callum McGregor. These guys, no matter who leaves this football club, be that Jota, Matt O'Reilly, these guys are constant. They're here. And I think that the importance of that type of player sometimes is overlooked, sometimes it's taken for granted. But again, they stepped up at the weekend, Acsom. I mean, Callum McGregor opens the scoring, James Forrest sets him up. Let's have a wee chat about these guys, the guys that aren't big on profile, aren't big brands on the socials. But I tell you what, without them, we would be lost.
Yeah, we've kind of spoke about them a fair bit recently, just how important they are, and particularly, obviously, Forrest is kind of honing in on that figure of, is it 500? 500 appearances.
500, yeah.
Yeah, and then Callum McGregor as well. Look, he's adding goals to his game again. You know, that's something that we all know he had in his locker. He's got a good strike on him, but it's good to see. That's two really great goals in the opening 3 games of the season. And I thought he was brilliant again yesterday. I think he started the season back to his very best. You know, and if he's adding these goals, that's even better. And I just think in general, you're right. The likes of Forrest and even Ralston behind the scenes, the kind of three Scottish boys that we've got, McGregor, Ralston, Forrest, Welsh as well, just having them around the squad, that kind of constant, it's integral as to why when players then come in, I think they can look at these professionals, look at these pros, and they kind of set the standard of what it's like. You know, Forrest, several managers have now spoke about his importance, and whilst we might not have seen much of him last season, he's just carried on this season the way he finished the end of last, assists, goals. So yeah, it's a lot to be encouraged about. And then by all accounts, if we're believing some of the links and stories this morning, there's going to be a few more incoming to really bolster what looks like a team really functioning well right now. And I think that's where we're all just excited that if you can just add 3 or 4 more players of real quality, this is a real good chance for an exciting and a positive Celtic season ahead.
This is a big thing, Acsom, right? And I'm going to get into the comments, some brilliant comments coming in, and we're going to keep it nice and balanced, because the one thing that you've got to take away from the start of our season is how together we look as a team. There's a unit there. There's a dynamic element to that where everything seems to just be working. And I think that it's taken a while, I think, for Brendan Rodgers to really cut away the kind of flab from this squad. There's still a few guys hanging about the squad who hopefully will be moved on. And it's about focusing on people who, you know what, there's going to be guys, Acsom, who are good enough players, but they're just not going to fit Brendan's system, or they're not prepared to change their own approach to the game. And I think when we talk about Rio Hatate, and we go by the comments made by Brendan Rodgers when he was looking back on last season, Rio Hatate didn't fit what Brendan was trying to do last season. And I think that, you know, as fans, we've covered every single game, and we try and look at every nuance of a player's body language and everything else. And I think it's easy to say, well, Rio was injured quite a bit last season, which he was. But let's look about the point where he was available. He's available at the beginning of the season and he's not picked. And David Turnbull starts the first game against Ross County last season. And it's only now that Brendan Rodgers was looking back on Rio Hatate and talking about, you know, the changes that he had to make as a player to fit into this team. And it sounds as though if you are willing, Acsom, just to take on board what Brendan is selling you, you have a great opportunity to be part of his success. Rio's obviously done that. Other guys haven't. Boston Lawwell,
Yeah,
you know, you put him on a par with Odin Holm, for example. Odin Holm survived, Lawwell hasn't. By the way,
and Holmes been part of the squad ever since. You know, he's been featuring, he's been coming on. He's actually looked pretty bright, I think. And you're right, Boston Lawwell's quickly offloaded. So yeah, there's something in that. And there was several times last season where you got the feeling that Rodgers would throw out little comments after games, whether it was initially at the start of the season about Hatate, but later on in the season, Turnbull. I think he mentioned things about Turnbull, Mikey Johnston. We all know how clever Rodgers is when it comes to what he says. You know, everything he says is with a purpose, is with a meaning. And I think with Hatate, I think a lot of it was maybe just wanted him to be a bit more careful in possession and felt he was maybe a bit too slack at times. And it's something I kind of agree with as well. You know, I think Rio Hatate's got the potential and the quality to be a really, really good top player, but I think sometimes he is a bit careless. And I think that's something that we need to see him eke out of his game. And yes, you know, he's one of those that can make things happen with with his range of passing, but I think we just want to get that consistency out of him, and I think we've seen that yesterday, that when he's on it, he's a game changer, whether it's goals, assists, he can really take the game by the scruff of the neck, and I think that's what Rodgers is trying to get out of him, and it seems like that's where we're headed now. He's going to be like the main man in that midfield, and I wonder if that's why, again, just like I said, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but his demeanour seemed a bit different yesterday. I know he's always kind of cut a wee bit of that kind of moody figure, isn't he? But I just thought even with his goal, he was buzzing with it. You could see it at the end of the game as well. And I wonder if he feels that now this could be his breakthrough season. He's obviously seen Matt O'Reilly get his move. There's been talk of Rio, in the last year or so, maybe wanting a move away. But I wonder if Rodgers has sat him down and said, look, give us a breakthrough season as well of that similar quality, play in the Champions League, be our main man. And then, the choices of clubs that he can go to. Obviously we don't want to see us losing our best players, but we're well aware, and we're not naive enough to know that a lot of players do come to Celtic with a view to a further move, and he'll be no different. But he needs to earn that move, and I think he needs to have that kind of breakthrough season now that Matt O'Reilly had last year, and I think he's capable. We've seen it in glimpses, we've just maybe not seen that consistency, but hopefully yesterday's the beginning of that.
I agree with you, actually. I think that he's kind of played like a bit of a free spirit, and that kind of maverick approach to the game previously would have been accepted by fans and probably managers alike, as long as you get your assists and get your goals. But I don't think Brendan works like that. He needs the player to be part of a system. And if he can get that consistency as in this season, it could be sensational. I mean, he's shown us what he's capable of, but it's just to, hone it and fine tune it. And I think Brendan's great at that. And he was asked the question after the game, talking about Matt O'Reilly, about what he did for O'Reilly. And he was at pains to point out, listen, the biggest part of this is on the player. The player has got to be the one that changes things around and takes on board what you're trying to give him. But I do think that he pointed out, listen, I had to, get more goals out of him. And he did that. So obviously the team played around that and he was given a wee bit more freedom. But O'Reilly absolutely grabbed that opportunity. I think Rio can do it as well. Unfortunately, and again, he touched on this, there's certain players that come to this football club, Acsom, who won't be 500 appearance players. They won't be here for 10 years. He says you've just got to accept that. And then you've got the constant, the likes of Callum McGregor and the likes of James Forrest, who will be that type of player. But, it was very positive after the game, I've got to say, right? But let's try and balance that with a scene that was caught on camera, ended up in the social media with Peter Lowell going into the stadium. Now, there's a few people... Let's not disagree about this, ladies and gents. But there's a few
I think this is going to be a divisive topic, isn't it?
It's going to be. It already is, by the looks of it, by the way. I'm going to start off by Jungle Line just rubbing it in whilst we're all getting back to the kind of Greek weather and all the kids are back at school. Jungle Line is going to be watching the next 5 days of Acsom on the beach. Brilliant. Fair play to you. We could do this, Acsom, from a beach hut somewhere. We could do that, no problem, if they've got good Wi-Fi. Matt McVicker comes in, and by the way, this is brilliant. I've lost 3 stones since the 3rd of June, so rewarded myself with the Army Green kit. The Army Green kit, is that what we're calling it? Right.
Are you a fan of it?
Well, you know what? I think that the top you're wearing now is immaculate. It's beautiful, right? Particularly without the sponsor, right? Yeah. I think it looks stunning. And I think it's a type of kit I've seen that kit aficionados all over Europe, the type of guy that Liam is, Liam will buy a football kit if it's smart. Doesn't matter who the team is other than the obvious, right? And that's the type of kit that I think would appeal to a wide audience. It's just the canary yellow. I like a yellow away kit anyway, but that's an absolute stunner. The 3rd kit, listen, I know modern football and all that kind of stuff, and it's the big Adidas deal. We're going to release 3rd kits. I'm giving up arguing the toss. I don't think we need them. We've released them in the past, never worn them. It just looks like a generic template with a Celtic badge on it. That's my problem. Like the type of training top you would get, there's a design. It could be like the goalie strips. The Celtic goalie strips will be used as a template all over Europe by Adidas. Right. So there's nothing specific to it that I think, all right, I know why we've used that. I mean, come on. The homage to the jungle quickly changed to the relationship with the fans and the terracing and all this kind of stuff. Seriously. I mean, my memories of the jungle, because my dad used to take me in there, it was pandemonium in there. It was absolute pandemonium. Yeah. And it was macaroon bars and Wrigley's chewing gum. And it's the smells. Asim, the smells that you remember, and the
I've heard this.
Bovril, worse, the worst smell. And I mean, I look at that top, and it does not remind me of the jungle. That's all I'm saying, right? But
fair play
what's
to
your
Matt.
take? What's your take on it?
I'm the same, and I think it kind of ties into maybe what our next point is I don't think there's a need for it, and the timing of releasing extra kits, and that amongst everything else is probably what led to the scenes we seen yesterday, which we'll obviously talk about. But fair, well done to Matt. I'm sure it'll look good.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I'm not going to be going for that one.
Well, Matt, well done. I've got to absolutely applaud you for losing 3 stones. That's no mean feat since the 3rd of June. Well done, mate. And I mean, when you get to my age, I assume you've got all this to come, young man. I'm getting fit for 50, right? I'm getting fit for 50. Me and a few mates that I used to go to school with, and as soon as this stream is over, I'm going for my daily run. It's great for the old noggin. It's great for the mental health. It's good for the fitness. The wee guy can't run rings round me in the back garden, all that stuff. So well done, Matt. But yeah, let's talk then about the scenes. And listen, I've seen the same video clip as everybody else has seen, and I try not to judge what's going on because you're not there. But what I heard Peter Lowell saying, "Calm down."
Yep, I heard that.
And as he walked away, he was called an a-hole. I don't want to swear because YouTube didn't like that. But yeah, he was. And I thought that was a wee bit unfair because he's taken the time to go over, right? Because we complain quite a lot on here about lack of engagement. And there's the chairman of the football club, former CEO, coming over to chat, talk to a group of supporters in the rain. Obviously, he's got a natty-looking umbrella. But what did you make of it? Because I'm just thinking to myself, right, he's come over. Give him the respect of that. He's come over to chat to you. And I think he was trying to pacify the group a wee bit by saying, listen, calm down. We're going to get some business done.
I think I've been kind of to and fro with my thoughts on it. I'm a bit conflicted in the sense that, look, we sit and criticise Peter Lowell every week, and the board. So, I guess the argument is, well, why do it online or on the podcast? But then when you're there in person, you've got a chance to say it. Don't. So I do agree that when the opportunity arises, they need to be taken to task, and I just think there's a way of going about it potentially because there's such few and far between such opportunities to engage, and it seems like he obviously came over. I don't know the ins and outs of how it began, whether it was went over and chatted to them or the other way around. So I just think in those kind of instances, there is an opportunity to maybe go about it, raise your points, raise your critiques, but in a way that it's more of a discussion that then can be a bit of back and forth, rather than, like you say, the obscenities, and then that way it just kind of ended the conversation there and then, but look, I agree as well. It's not like you could have done that in the most erudite and articulate fashion, and they still, they still wouldn't care and they still wouldn't take in what you're saying. So it's not like it's going to make a difference because you've seen it at the AGMs. It's all set up. It's all PR. This doesn't really give real fans an opportunity to actually speak, face to face and have their say about things. So that's why I'm a bit conflicted, because I get it. We've all sat there and absolutely been frustrated and ridiculed the way the club's run, and why is he even back? And there's so much frustration, so much that we probably all would want to say, and it's hard when you're in the heat of the moment. Obviously, that anger and frustration maybe comes across, and you want to say what you feel about the guy. Now, I do think you're right though. They're just in that video clip. It just looks like maybe it could have been dealt with a wee bit differently, in the sense that if he's having a chat and he's saying calm down, then maybe engage a bit more in terms of, right, what's the plans. Now, look, it may not have made a difference because he may not have said anything of substance or of note, but that would have been more interesting to see in terms of, right, what's he actually saying about it? If someone raises a point, look, what's going on? Why, as the manager said himself, and it was interesting to see the manager say that, because that's the first time he's kind of alluded to the fact that he's actually not been happy that it's gone on this long. Before that, he's always kind of passed it off as, look, he's relaxed about the situation, but he came out and said it yesterday, shots were fired as to our recruitment policy. So when the manager's saying it, then it's no wonder that fans are frustrated. So I get that. But as you say, I just think there's maybe a better way of going about it where you can actually have a bit of dialogue.
This is a thing, right? Because if you look at the group of people, no matter what we say about CEOs, chairman of a board, etc., the figure that's targeted is always Peter Lowell, right? He's that type of figure. And we've all seen that WhatsApp message that went around in relation to all the successes under Peter Lawwell and how the club was run prior to his arrival, etc. We've seen it. And yeah, it has probably come originally from someone who has the ear of the chairman, who is in and around the boardroom. And that's probably where it started, because there is an attitude, Acsom, of us just being like rabble rousers. We're just shouting off the treetops, even though we've got all this success. You want more, and calm down would be the slogan that they constantly probably attribute to fans like you and me. Never mind anybody who might feel so emotive outside the stadium that it gets a little bit heated. And that's understandable as well. But I do think that there really is a situation at the moment, Acsom, where they do not appreciate the frustrations. They just don't appreciate the frustrations, because I always go back to, what do you know about recruitment, Paul? That's what I was asked that question. What do you know about recruitment? Well, I know that we've been running with one left back all season, and that's not good enough. I know that we don't have a head of recruitment, and that's not good enough. I know that our scouting net doesn't go any wider than people telling us from agencies this guy's available, or Brendan Rodgers being aware of a player due to the fact that he has seen them or worked with them in England, and that's not good enough. So no, I'm not an expert in recruitment. I'm a football fan who can see the basics aren't working and they're not in place properly. And surely as fans, we can raise that. We can raise
That's
that
the
with
thing,
the guys.
They don't want to hear any criticisms.
No.
It's like an echo chamber. They just want patted on the back. That's why the AGMs are the way they are. That's why you've got certain types of people there that are, going to congratulate them, and that's what frustrates the ordinary fan, is because any kind of critique is shot down. You've seen that firsthand. You've had messages from people in the club who clearly watch the show, who clearly know, but do not like any form of criticism at all. And you're not going to get anywhere without that kind of fan engagement as to what we would like to see done better, or even just some form of explanations as to why things are the way they are. When your own manager is saying, things need to be better, and he's been here 3 windows and there's been no improvement, and he was here 7 years ago and it was the same thing. So clearly, as a club, we're not progressing. Why? That's the questions that need to be asked, and that's the questions that need to be answered. But and with these guys in charge, it doesn't seem like there's any kind of wish or desire for that fan engagement. And the guy that was like that, we don't know whether he was good at his job or not. But Dom Mackay, who was big on fan engagement, was big on these things, didn't last long. And you wonder why. It could be obviously to do with a number of things. Whether he was competent enough for the role, we don't know all that, right? That's all speculation. But it does, make you think that was someone who was willing to actually engage with fans, who was willing to maybe take on feedback and have that kind of communication, which the guys currently just don't want to have.
See the thing with that, we've had this discussion before, Acsom, and I totally agree with that, because the only reason that Acsom and many, in fact, the majority of other fan media platforms are now able to go to press conferences, be invited for one-off kind of an audience with, there's been that in the past with Joe Hart, for example. When Ange Postecoglou was unveiled as a manager, we were invited to that. The only reason that happened was Dom Mackay. And that's a fact, because we had been trying for a number of years. Why, you might ask, why would you want to get all that kind of thing? Well, it's great to get access. It's absolutely brilliant to get access to these new signings coming into the football club. But also at the same time, there was a situation where the club had decided that some would get that access. And I'm talking a handful, 4 or 5 trusted, you can maybe guess who the platforms were, trusted platforms who could carry a message and who were probably, they would accept that. I wouldn't accept that. I'm not going to be given a narrative by anyone and running it if it's against what we believe as a platform, because you're just selling out. But there were 4 or 5 who were always there and always giving it. And I just felt, well, if you're going to open it up to 4 or 5 who at that time, for me, weren't that active anyway, in terms of social media or creating content, because it's one thing, a story breaks, right? And somebody doing their job, like Anthony Joseph, breaks a story and 200 Celtic sources copy that story into their own blog and put it out. That's not content creation.
No.
AI is going to put you out of a job.
Right.
That's all that is. But to actually, get somebody interviewed, set up live events and do the legwork to create some content and then put it on your channel, or do what we're doing just now. kind of like having a conversation about Celtic.
You've also seen the benefits
different.
of fan media at press conferences, especially when things aren't going great. It's not going to be your easy, safe questions that some of the mainstream media are going to ask. I remember being at one of them when it was the Kilmarnock, I think after the back of the Kilmarnock defeat and the Hearts defeat. And tough questions need to be asked that are more likely to be asked by fan media because, we want to know what's going on. We're not just going to ask the safe question. And I think that's been a real positive that's came out of fan media the last couple of years, as well as look at how much content there is now. Nobody really uses your mainstream media for news now. It's all about whether it's, as you say, the certain kind of select sources or fan media podcasts, all that, which bring out the news and then discuss it, player profiles, all that kind of thing. So I think it's been a real positive that's came out of it. And as you said, that all happened as a result of Don Mackay, back in 2021. So it just shows you there are positives to it. If the club would only use that, it would actually work in their favour. But look, that was the take home from that incident yesterday. There's a lot that happened yesterday. Some of Brendan's comments were brilliant. I really enjoyed his press conference.
And box office, Brendan.
Oh, he's back, isn't he? He's fully back. You can just tell he sets the tone. If you compare that to this time, maybe if you remember was it his second or third season when he said the Terminado and he said all those kind of things. We didn't get John McGinn, we didn't get Piccini. And it just sets the tone of the mood around the club. And you've seen that yesterday, and I watched that yesterday, and I know that we're going to go on to obviously discuss all the transfers and why it's led to the last week and things, but everybody's pretty excited about Celtic right now. The fans are all a bit, in a good mood. Obviously, we'll see what this week brings, but just looking at how confident and relaxed Rodgers felt yesterday gives me that kind of confidence that I feel he knows we're going to get the business in this week that he wants. He's obviously not happy it's taken so long. None of us are, but he gave the sense of someone who's pretty happy right now. And I don't think he would have had that kind of press conference yesterday if he was still quite worried that come Friday we're going to be well short. So I think we're going to see at least 3 or 4 come in this week.
I took that from the press conference as well. The post-match, Acsom, I really did. It feels as though there's been a lot of discussions in the background, possibly heated discussions in the background. But it's come to the point now where some of the guys that are coming in probably weren't on the radar at the beginning of the window. I think we've probably lost out on a couple of targets who were genuine targets as well, and that's where the frustration lies with Brendan. But I think that there has been the heated discussions required. I almost said heated driveways, heated discussions required. And I did get a sense of that, and it was great. He even had that charm when somebody's phone went off to make a joke about, is that Michael trying to get me to shut up kind of thing. It was great. It was brilliant. And I am feeling positive, right? And I think to myself, I put 4 or 5 up on the tagline today. We're going to run through the names at the moment that are circulating in the in the realms of potential Celtic signings, and we're going to look at the likelihood of these signings as well, what they're going to bring to the football club. A couple of appearances I want to mention as well from the weekend, but before I do that, the comments are flowing in. By the way, we get upwards of like 1,000 comments on these live streams. It's incredible. We're sitting at over 1,500 live on a Monday afternoon. It's brilliant. As you say, there's a positivity, but I don't mind there being a demand for excellence. There's nothing wrong with it, saying, right, we're in a good place. 3 or 4 more players, we could be in a really strong position, particularly going into Europe. And that's where the frustration lies. But yeah, the reason I brought that up is Don Mackay opened the doors for guys like Acsom, etc., to move in. Now we're in there. Hopefully we can stay there. There's been a few casualties over the years, but it wasn't the forward thinking of those who are currently at the club. This is my point. No. It was someone who came in briefly, said, actually, this fan media thing, this is great.
If it was up to them, they'd bin it. They'd bin it in a heartbeat.
I think so. And by the way, he did text us when we won an award after that, Don Mackay. Having left the football club, he texted us, say, well done, much deserved. So yeah, I think it's something that we must thank him for. Ronnie Glavin, you and Boy Martin, you are in on the comments. It should be an exciting week with the Champions League draw and hopefully at least 4 new signings. Don't forget Oasis reforming tomorrow, Ewan. If you're from my era, it's a big deal, right? I don't care if it's Liam Noel and 4 Stooges. It's a big deal. I'll be down the front. Ronnie Glavin here, looking hopeful for signings this week. We should never be in a position. This is what Brendan was saying, we should not be in this position. Totally agree with you. Now, P. O'Neill's standing up for the guys who chatted to Peter Lawwell. Jungle Line, there was no verbal attack on Lawwell. What are you on about? I think verbal attack, I think the parting gesture of calling him what they called him was probably going to put that tinge on it, I seem to be honest. And yeah, he did. He walked over. Second Prize says, we've seen the video of him being verbally abused. Geez, not so long since his house was firebombed. Get off the guy's back. By the way, firebomb, not the Celtic fans. We know that had nothing to do with it, even though Acsom were accused of that at the time.
Right.
He is a fan, the same as the rest of us. We might not agree with him. I think we are fairly balanced on this one. I remember when he left, and we were speaking about the colossal contribution he had made to the football club, but there comes a point where fresh ideas are required. I think if you could have a Peter Lawwell figure at the football club who's behind the scenes making sure the machine continues, and if there is an issue ahead financially, he sees it early enough and says, actually, we need to start doing that slightly differently. That's brilliant. Don't get involved in football matters, because that's what happened last time round as a CEO. And we know it did. We absolutely know it did, and that's where I think,
you'll have people that will roll off the stats of the tenure that he's been around and how much success, domestically we've had, and they'll use that as a stick to criticise those who criticise him. But I think it's undeniable that we've also been held back, a lot during that time. Whilst there's been domestic success, we've had so much potential to be better than what we have done. And obviously, and my main point in that is in terms of Europe, in terms of recruitment, in terms of strategy, all those things. Because at the end of the day, we're playing in a league which we are like it or loathe it. It's a 2-horse league most of the time. So yeah, we've had a lot of domestic success, and not for 1 minute do we take it for granted. It's been brilliant, but there's no denying that 90% of the fans out there believe that we've been hindered, when it comes to strategy and recruitment and actual ambition, that we could have done so much better. So I think, we have been pretty balanced. We'll praise where praise is due, but we'll criticise when it's due as well. And I think, even just him coming back was just unnecessary, because it brought in this kind of divisive nature again, just his very presence, and it was not needed. But look, let's see what happens. Let's see what this next week brings. Regardless of how well this week goes now, I don't think that should suddenly be like, oh, they played a blinder. I'm expecting to be pretty happy Friday. I think we'll get the business that's needed. I think we'll get a bit of quality in. I think we'll spend a bit of money. But I'm not going to be sitting there saying, oh, we were wrong for criticising all along, because again, I'll reiterate what the manager said yesterday. It shouldn't take us to this last week. We've came through 4 games, which on paper were pretty difficult games. Away to St Mirren, away to Hibs, Kilmarnock, who were one of the form teams last season, and we've managed to do it with really a weaker squad than we had finishing last season. But that's because Brendan's got the team playing really well, and the players have done well. But that could easily have resulted in drop points, at which point, again, the pressure would have been on, and the criticism would have came in and saying, look, well, this is what happens when you're underprepared, undercooked. We managed to get by these 4 games, playing brilliant football, all comfortable results. But again, you'd rather have had these guys in, so that when next week, the Derby game, or when the Champions League, they've been bedded in, they've had a few games under their belts. Now, obviously, whoever we get in, it's unlikely to be starting next week, which is fine because of how well we're playing. But as the manager said, it's not how a proper club should be run. We should have had these positions identified and sorted well before. But we are where we're at. And it does look like an exciting week ahead. Honestly, as much as we'd all love it, to have been done before, and I think we can all agree, waking up this morning and seeing us linked with a guy that's in Glasgow, an exciting left back for his medical. We've made an inquiry for a winger from Lazio, which I've seen now looks like it's not going to happen. And then we've also put in a bid for a highly rated Belgian playing in the Bundesliga. That's pretty exciting. And then we've got, as you say, a Champions League draw to look forward to. So, I'm hoping it's going to be a good week. But it's time for the links to stop and for actual deals to be done now.
No, you're right. It is. It's massive. It's an absolutely huge week. What else does this to you, Acsom? Nothing except Celtic does this to you. And Mark, I can see this coming back time and time again all season. Mark, calm down. Yeah, I'm sure it'll end up on a T-shirt somewhere. Mark Anthony Smith. good to see the arguments have started already. Yeah, it's part of the fun, Mark. Absolutely. Just keep it nice and clean. And Kaiser, absolutely, we're going to get plenty of Oasis references all week. But I'll tell you what, whoever's on the tunes at the weekend, if and when we scalp them, right, get roll with it on, right? We all know. Monty, even though we might disagree from time to time, you've not been on the comments for a long, long time. Welcome home, sir. Welcome home. You're back. You're back in the comments.
What a way to make his announcement back.
Absolutely. I've not seen you on here for a long time, Monty. It's good to see you back, pal. Liam Devine. For me, the fact Lowell went and spoke to him is a further red flag. He isn't even aware of the anger. This is the last point on this one, and then we're going to get into some new signings. He doesn't compute it, but that's a problem. Liam, I think you make a great point, because I have spoken to not people on the board. I've spoken to people who are major shareholders at the club, more than one, who are not directors at the football club. And there is this attitude whereby, you know, I'm not going to say it's us and them, but it's just like the way that they think and the way that we think are completely different. Right now, to a point, I get it. They have to think in a certain way. But I would go as far to say out of touch. What do you know about recruitment? Or put the medals on the table. That kind of attitude, I see. Look at us, we're brilliant, we're successful, so why are you moaning?
Yeah. The other argument is he went over to them because he's confident. You know, he's confident. We're playing well right now, and he's like, right, okay, well, wait till you see what we've got for you in this coming week, and he feels now's a good time to go over and engage a bit. You know, while
quite
things
bullish,
are good.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know, but just the overall mood of yesterday, that, and then Brendan, I think things are going to happen. Well, we all know that we're going to make signings, but I think it will. You know, we've talked about it before, how our expectations gradually get lowered and lowered as time goes on. You know, we started the window 2 months ago and we're all excited, thinking we need this, we need that, and then we've got 2 weeks to go and we're like, right, we'll just take this, and then, you know, to the point where, like, even just last week we're like maybe 3, and we won't be happy with it, but it'll do. You know, it'll get us over what we need to do domestically, and we'll take it from there. But I think the fact that we're linked with, and I think we'll probably touch on some of the transfer rumours now, but the fact that we're linked with us, you know, with centre back today, we're linked with a winger today. These are the kind of positions which have gone under the radar a wee bit. While we've all been speaking, obviously, about Engels as a midfielder, the left back obviously looks pretty much a done deal from Barcelona. So I think, yeah, if we can get all these positions rectified, the fact that we're linked with them means that at least Rodgers knows that's where he wants. He spoke about it. He wanted 2 midfielders, left backs coming in. He spoke about a centre back, and then the other one for me is a winger, which I've been pretty keen on for quite a while. If we can get all that in, then I think it's been in the end a successful window.
Yeah, I said this morning, we're like that genius kid at school that leaves the studying to the last night, crams it all in, and somehow gets away with it to fight another day. Let's run through some of the targets then. We've got George coming in, the Barcelona kid is in Glasgow. This looks like a done deal. It's a loan with no option to buy, but there is obviously a buyout clause. His name is Alex Valle. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not like Brendan. I can't speak Spanish. Is it Alex Valle or Valle?
I've heard Valle as it's silent L's. I don't know. I could be wrong. We'll need someone to maybe correct us if so. But yeah, I've heard Valle. I don't know. Shall we go with that for now?
We'll go with that.
Or Alex.
Aye, Ali. No, we won't go with Ali. Maybe on the introductory press conference, we'll clarify that. He's a left back. Now, 20 years of age. Like everybody else, I assume you'll have watched the action. He's been getting some game time out on loan from Barcelona. Obviously, comes from very, very good stock. But he does look the real deal. What I'm going to ask you, though, at the weekend there, Alistair Johnson, I thought Alistair Johnson was terrific. He scores his goal. Sean pointed out it's maybe taken him a wee while to get up to that point because of the Copa America, lack of time, rest time, etc. But he really is, and people might disagree with this, he's the only guy that's got somebody behind him kind of pushing him for a jersey, and Anthony Ralston, who also made an appearance. I don't think it's a healthy thing for Taylor not to have the competition. No. And what you bring here is a player in Valle, I'm going to call him that, who might be a first pick, but he'll certainly improve that challenge at left back. Taylor has not had that for far too long.
Yeah, initially when we look, ideally we wouldn't want a loan with no option to buy. That's not ideal. It's a position that we've wanted to get sorted for so long now. It seems like we're just kicking it down the can again in terms of not getting someone that's either a permanent signing or the option to buy. So that's the downside of it. I guess the other downside, if we just start with those, is the fact that people say he's not played a lot of professional games. But then you look at a number of things. I think he was a regular feature for Levante last season in the second division in Spain, which I'm guessing is an equal, if not better, standard still than the SPFL. The majority of the teams there. He's obviously very highly rated. You look at any of the forums or the people that watch Barcelona regularly or watch their B team or just have a bit of knowledge on him, say he's a very, very talented individual. And we're almost disappointed to see him go because he was on the bench at the weekend there. They obviously see him as someone that can compete in their squad, and are quite surprised to see him go. But they've obviously not given that option to buy because they rate him highly. There's been different chat about the release clause and things like that. So whilst initially I was like, but then the more I read about him, the more I've watched clips of him, I think he's here to play. I don't think he's here to be an understudy. And now it's down to the two of them to fight it out and see who's deserving. And I think you're right. That's what Greg Taylor needs. And I'm a fan of Greg Taylor. I have been, but I've also been open enough to say that I feel like we can upgrades, maybe a harsh word, but have competition in there. Have someone who adds different strengths and different qualities to what Greg Taylor doesn't. There's certain things that Greg Taylor doesn't have, and you'd want that to be addressed. And whilst this guy seems like he kind of plays a similar style in terms of his main attributes are he plays quite introverted, and he's good on the ball, but he looks quick, he looks athletic. Technically, he's going to be very gifted on the ball. We know that when you come from the La Masia system, that's a given. You're going to be, and again for us in Europe, the way we like to play, I think that's going to be a big help. Domestically, we're going to have a lot of the ball, which again will suit his style of play. He's 5'10", so I think he's slightly taller than Greg Taylor. And just by all accounts, anyone that watches him, I've seen a few Twitter accounts who are very knowledgeable on the guy and say that we've got a gem here. Now, whilst it might only be for a year, look, if we've got a backup plan for down the line, fine. But for the here and now, if we've got someone who's going to be equal, if not potentially better than Greg Taylor, obviously remains to be seen, then that's a problem area that's at least addressed for now. And I'm quite excited to see what he can do because I like I say, I don't think he's here just to be an understudy. I think he's here to try and cement that place.
You look at the wages that have been touted as well. That apparently we're going to be contributing 25 grand to his weekly wage, and I think that if you're going to be shelling that level of cash out, that's a first team player that you're hoping will be a first team player. I'm just going to be, maybe some will think this is brutal about the left back position. I think Greg Taylor had a couple of seasons under Ange Postecoglou where there was a positional change in terms of the inverted fullbacks that really suited Greg Taylor. And I think that, for me, that was his best position and his best performances at Celtic were during that period. I think back to when he signed for the football club, Neil Lennon didn't fancy him. Didn't fancy him. I mean, we brought in other left backs. We brought in Ball and Goalie. Yeah. And obviously we brought in a left back, Uruguayan, team of the tournament in the World Cup, who had come from AC Milan, high caliber. Neil Lennon didn't fancy Greg Taylor, absolutely not. And then what then happened is Ange Postecoglou seen something in him, and I think got the absolute maximum out of him. Yeah. Has he reproduced that type of performance or that level of performance for Brendan Rodgers? I think that's a good debate to have. If I look at the weekend there, Greg Taylor gave away the ball 3 times in the first 7 minutes of the game. And if our game's all about possession and, grinding teams down and all that and sharp passing movements, and one player's giving the ball away 3 times in 7 minutes, then you're a weak link. You're a weak link in that style of play. I don't think he's a strong enough defender. I think that he's targeted not even just in Europe, but domestically by everybody. That area of the park is targeted.
Diagonal balls so common, isn't it?
It really is. So I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that. I'm not just going on a rant on Greg Taylor. I think we can do better.
I think he's actually had a good start to the season again. And I honestly do think he's been a overall good player for Celtic. he has his flaws, and I think predominantly they get exploited in Europe. I think that's where it's glaringly obvious. But you're right, even domestically, teams do target him. But by and large, I think what he offers in terms of his passing ability, when he does play introverted, I think he's been very good. But I've seen some comments where people are saying this guy's not going to come in and displace. I don't know how we can say that without having seen him play. And just again, look, it's early. We're all going to only be able to make an informed opinion after we've seen him play a few times. But just from the write ups and from the reviews, again, just the fact he's coming from Barca, he's part of their most recent matchday squad. He played in the Classico in pre-season, and by all accounts was a star performer in that game, playing at right back out of position. He's just very highly rated. And as you've mentioned, the figures that we're paying for Barcelona to loan him out here, I genuinely think whether it's just confidence on the player's behalf or assurances that he's been given, I think he'll be playing a lot of games for us, and I think he might surprise a few that, yes, Greg Taylor's been a tidy good player for us, but there are other options out there. And maybe we've been stung because the guys that we've had, Laxalt and Bernabe, and these guys have just been so hopeless, that you almost think sometimes, right,
What
better
a
the devil,
run.
What's
What a
that?
run. Laxalt, Bernabe. What a run of
Bernabe, yeah.
signings.
And
Oh,
and
my
when
word.
Bernabe came, again, everyone was maybe looking at him and thinking he could. Bernabe had no game intelligence, absolutely no game intelligence, whether it was on the ball, defensively. He just didn't offer anything.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy, you just know he's going to be good on the ball, and he's going to have that football intelligence that you have to have if you're coming through the Barcelona academy. And that's what excites me. I love footballers who've got a brain, who make the right decisions. Um, and I think that's one of Greg Taylor's actual strengths as well. He usually makes the right decisions when he's playing. But if we can upgrade on that, if we can add different qualities, and first and foremost add proper, genuine competition in an area that we've lacked for well over a year now, then it's a step in the right direction. Whether it's a stopgap for a lot of chat about Kieran Tierney down the line,
I was
look, it
going to
adds
say
up.
it.
You,
Yeah.
you broke that a few weeks ago, or even longer, that it was something that was well down the pipeline of what we were looking to do and bring in. The injury obviously scuppered that in the Euros. Is that something we're still looking to bring in down the line? We don't know, but it just seems like this is a good option for now.
This is a big thing. We do every single day speak about Celtic, and it's a wee bit like the Simpsons predictions for the future. You make so many predictions, a couple of them will get right. And we did hear in June, it was that Kieran Tierney was top of the shopping list. We would have done the business after the Euros, but he got that terrible injury. And there's a lot of talk about a stopgap until the Tierney deal is done. Who knows how he's going to come back from that injury? But I want to bring this up, not to have a go at the commenter, but just to bring up a point that Hugh Jars makes. Absolutely no excitement and wasting money on a Barcelona youth project who's never played in the first team. I'm going to give you one player, different position, who we've done exactly the same with at PSG, and that was Odsonne Edouard. He'd never kicked the ball for PSG, and he never did. But I'll tell you something.
Frimpong as well.
Frimpong. Man City under 23s, you're right. So I don't want to write him off simply based on these optics and the fact Barcelona want to keep him. They actually want to keep him. They want to loan him out to give him game time, but there's no option to buy on the deal. So I think at this moment in time, Valle is a player that I'm quite excited about us signing. I was going to bring in the Tierney chat as well. Arnie Engels, £6.5 million bid submitted, knocked back apparently. Fair enough. I've got a few days to go to up that, but he looks to be one that's the real deal as well. When you look at his performance, he's a Belgian, as you said, playing in the top division in Germany, 20 years of age. I think he would be a shrewd sign. It might not be a starter every week, but for me, he's got that pedigree.
It's not like Celtic to go in with the low ball offer, is it? So they're wanting between 8 and 10 initially, and now that seems to have gone up to 10 and 15 million euros. I hope we don't mess around with this though. We've not got the time now. That's the downside of leaving it so late. The downside of clubs knowing that we're cash rich on the back of Matt O'Reilly's sale today. I hope we don't mess about with it and just get it done. But obviously, we have to try it. We're not going to be held to ransom. But I think that's part of the negotiations. I think we'll see that one get done. Hopefully, it's been rejected, the initial bid, by all accounts. But if you're looking in the region of maybe 8.5, 10, between those kind of figures, I think we can start to play ball. But the profile of the player is exactly what we've been crying out for years. Someone that's played a lot of games, highly rated, playing in a top league. I've seen a write up from Derek Gray, or a review from Derek Gray, who obviously knows German football pretty well, and he's not one to exaggerate, or really, really kind of, he's careful with his words. And he said that he can run amok in Scotland. He said that he can be a really good player in Scotland, and I take that on board, because, like I say, Derek's not one to kind of make these kind of hyperbolic statements. I think if he's saying that, he's obviously watched him, knows him well, and feels it's a player who can really flourish. He's on the fringes of being a Belgian international. There was shouts, Belgian fans wanted him to get called up for the Euros there, but they went with experience. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in future squads. He's the kind of player. Look, I watched a bit of him at the weekend, and by all accounts, it wasn't one of his better performances. But again, you're playing with a team like Augsburg, who are not going to have a lot of the ball in a lot of the German games. But from what I have seen and what I have heard of him, he's very tidy in possession, energetic, athletic, got a good engine on him, can find a pass, can create, can play a whole range of positions in midfield as well. So on Saturday, he started as a kind of advanced number 10 role. But from what Derek Gray was saying, he usually plays a bit more deep lying. So again, horses for courses. If we're playing in Europe, that's someone that can play maybe alongside Callum McGregor in a more defensive role. But when we're more domestic games, he can maybe play more advanced. I remember when Celtic played, I think it was Borussia Mönchengladbach a few years back, and you look at their midfield, and it's the kind of profile and kind of players that I used to think that's what we need. Players that are really good on the ball, just very athletic, knew what they were going to do with the ball before they get it. Players that, we've seen them play for Salzburg and Leipzig, and we always wish that's the kind of guys that we could have. He strikes me as that kind of profile, someone that, we're going to have to pay a bit of money for right now, but at 20, I think the sell-on value that the club love to take into consideration for someone like that will be high as well down the line. And it's exactly the kind of profile player we've wanted for a while. So I'm excited about that one, and I'm hopeful we'll get that done this week.
Yeah, I share that excitement. I've got to say, the one player that you mentioned earlier was Gustav Isaacson, Lazio, played against us obviously last season, 23-year-old right winger, who it seems as though that deal's dead. He doesn't fancy it. He wants to stay at Lazio, and I think our initial interest was something that they weren't that keen on Lazio. The other midfielder, Bogusz, Matthias Bogusz, the Polish attacking midfielder from the MLS, that's a name that it's going to be a bit quiet on him in the last 48 hours or so. If we were to bring in another midfielder, of course, that means that we've already brought in two. With Bernardo in the door, what does it mean for the likes of Iwata and home? Does that mean that maybe Iwata's out of favour? He wasn't on the bench at the weekend.
He's not featured at all this season, has he?
No.
Iwata's not featured, and that to me says it all, because you would have brought him on but ahead of home, given that Iwata was the kind of more experienced player that has been usually the go-to guy when we bring on a midfielder. So the fact he's not featured at all, to me, suggests that Brendan doesn't really have him in his plans. So Brendan said he wanted two in. So I think we do need two in, because if you look at it, we've got Bernardo, Hatate and McGregor, the starting three at the weekend there. And then Holm is your guy that now kind of comes on. But beyond that, if you're kind of disregarding him as someone that's not really featuring much, we're quite short then. So yeah, you bring in Engels, but I would still think we need one more. And that's where Bogusz, is that how you pronounce it? Bogusz? Bogusz, yeah. It has gone quiet on him. I wonder if that's because he featured last night for the Los Angeles last night, and I think they had a final against Columbus Crew. So I wonder if that's why that's kind of gone quiet until that was out of the way. But he's someone, again, who can play in a number of positions. So he can cover a few of the positions that we spoke about. He can play in the wing. He can play in advanced midfield as well, and probably even as a front man. So that would tick the box in that sense. A versatile player who can bolster the squad in a number of areas, especially if we're not looking to buy a third striker. And Isaacson, who you mentioned, I know we made an inquiry and it looks like it's not going to happen, but the fact that we're looking at wingers again is encouraging, because it means it's an area that we know we need to strengthen in. So I wonder if Bogusz could be that guy that covers a few areas. But I do think, I don't think Engels on its own for midfield would be enough, because I just don't think Iwata is going to feature much, and then we are a bit short.
The big thing for me is the same thing happens if you bring in a winger. You start thinking to yourself, I've seen Yang, Palmer, are they for the off?
We've seen Palma's, was it Instagram or I can't remember what account it was, but he put something up yesterday. One of those cryptic.
I've not seen it. Was it cryptic?
No. Well, it was just something about showing resilience, when you get a setback. I don't know, I maybe misquoted there, but something along those lines, one of those Todd Cantwell type things. Whether that was just because he didn't feature yesterday, or maybe he's been told or feels that he's surplus to requirements or not going to feature much, but that could pave the way for someone else coming in. I don't know. Again, though, Palma and Yang for me aren't. We've got Maida, we've got Kuhn, who I'm really excited about now, in Forest, who Forest has done well to earn himself back into contention, but let's be honest, isn't someone that we all foreseen last season or even this season has been a main starter. So I still feel we're light in those positions because Palma and Yang haven't consistently shown. I know people don't like us lumping them two into the same boat, but to me they are. They're not consistent enough to have shown that they can be big players for us. So I would like another winger, and if it means maybe getting one of them out on loan or offloading one of them. Mikey Johnston's still here, so we need to try and offload him. Yeah.
Is that going to be part of the Austin Trusty deal? Maybe Sheffield United are the latest club interested in Mikey Johnson.
Yeah, that was again another one that's gone quiet, but there was strong links about Trusty. He's divided opinion. Well, I say divided. I think a lot of people reading the reviews of his time at Sheffield United aren't too enthused about that one. But Sheffield United were a bit of a shambles last season. One of the worst defences you'll ever see. I know he was part of it, but he by all accounts did really well when he was at Birmingham prior to that, and obviously had something about him to be at Arsenal's book. So he's an option. Obviously, we'll know Carter Vickers well. We've been linked with Mepham again from Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Welsh international, another one who I think would be a good option. So again, the fact that we're linked with these positions to me is encouraging, because we've been saying it. We don't want to. I thought Liam Scales had a great game yesterday. I thought he was really, really good, but we still need to strengthen in that area. So if we can get one of the centre backs in, it looks like those are the two main ones that we've been linked with. But yeah, Gus Lagerbielke, I think a loan move is on the cards for Lecce. And Nawrocki, where's he been? Is he still injured?
Well, again, off the radar and not that much spoken about in terms of his departure. Acsom, it's gone very, very quiet on that front. I mean, these guys are going to be hard to move on. Nawrocki, he comes in, barely plays. Big wages, big transfer fee. It's not easy to move them on. They'll end up going out on loan for a year, and it just, as you said, kicking the can down the road for another year. I think that's a good point from Will McMillan coming in. Tierney may be signed as a centre-back. You imagine Tierney coming as a left centre-back, whereby he's not expected to pound up and down that park all day long, up and down the left-hand side. And it might actually play into part of his extending his football career, because there's no way a player that comes in and has suffered that level of injury since a 17-year-old Acsom can maintain it. Probably left centre-back would be a better option for him. I never considered that until Will said it there.
Not for me. I just don't think he'd be an upgrade. Not I say an upgrade, but I don't think he's going to really, really strengthen us in that centre-back department if we were to bring him in. And also, as much as there's a romance about having him come back at some point, I just feel like he's so injury prone now. That I don't think we should be really, really holding out for that to be our saviour at left back. He's had such a rough time of it. It's a shame, but it doesn't seem like you can get a consistent 6 months out of him these days. So I think until he gets that really looked into and sorted, if he can, and I really hope he can, I just don't think it's something we should keep on kind of romanticising over. Maybe prior to the Euros, if he was injury free and it was an option, but it's been too many years now where he really has struggled, and it is a shame. But I think we should move on, to be honest, to other options and targets.
Yeah, a couple of messages coming through in the comments. By the way, thanks everybody for getting involved in the chat, and thank you to the viewer who was number 1691 to come in as well, because that's the peak of today's viewing figures. Liam Devine, What does Rodgers mean when he says they need to sort it after this window? Surely not an appointment of a head of recruitment or a director of football, like fans have been talking about for ages. Yes, Liam, absolutely. And CJ, I'll leave this as the final comment on this week of all weeks, where we'll be covering the final moments of the transfer window. We'll be covering the Champions League draw. We won't be covering the reformation of Oasis, but I'll do that quietly, I'm pretty sure. And CJ says, put your money where your mouth is. Celtic. I got it.
I asked you last week, Paul John, what you thought we'll end up with. Has it changed?
What was my answer? Because I've stuck to the figure of £36 million gross. That's what we're going to spend, right? And I said left back, left centre back, a replacement for Matt O'Reilly, if there is such a thing, and a striker, I think. Did I say also a winger? That's a big shopping list.
I think it was maybe the winger rather than the striker, because I think it was on the back of Maeda's performance, so we all kind of thought maybe that's
right enough.
The priority.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to stick my neck out in the line. I think we'll get the left back, centre back, 2 midfielders, and a winger.
5 in a week. Oh, I cannot wait. Cannot wait for our catch up next week. Acsom Rabbani, that will be one to savour on Monday next week. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. Incredible turnout today, way up there at 1,700 or so on the live stream. Welcome back to some of the guys that haven't been on there for a while. Please don't fall out on the comment section. We're all Celtic fans. And thank you finally to Acsom for joining me on the show today. We do have a live event coming up. The tickets have been going really well over the weekend because it's Gordon Strachan and John Hartson. I mean, I've just got to introduce them, Acsom, and just let it run. Let it run. Absolutely. We've got live music from Davey McKendrick, big visuals and everything else to help us along. And you, as a member of the audience, can ask Gordon Strachan and John Hartson your own questions as well. Ticket link underneath the video. It's looking like it will be a belter of a night. Last thing for me to say, Acsom Rabbani, thanks for joining me again on A Celtic State of Mind.